Welcome, Jisun. Thank you so much for being here. And we love it that you are here in the month that celebrates people like you and me. So, welcome. Jisun is the VP of Data Services at UNFI. And I have to say that until recently, I didn't know what UNFI was. And then I was like, wait a second, you guys are the biggest suppliers to like Whole Foods, you know? So, because I guess you're in the wholesale industry, didn't hear of it so much. But now when I see a truck pass through and see UNFI on it, I know exactly what this company does. So welcome. Please tell us a little bit about yourself, and we shall go from there.
Okay. Thank you for the invitation. Honored to be here and honored to join other women and Asians and coming from various different background we share together. I'm Jisun Yang, and sometimes I also pronounced as a Jisun, but the right Korean pronunciation is a Jisun, which is very similar to Jason. So just my small introduction of how to pronounce my name, but I'll be recognized in either way, Jisun or Jisun or Jason, whichever way you think my right easier way to pronounce me. I will hear and listen.
A rose by any other name smells as sweet.
Yeah. So I
Great.
originally came from South Korea, and
Mm.
I came to US around third year in my college. So I spent more time here in the US. I currently work for, like Sangeeta is saying, I work for United Natural Foods. We pronounce as UNFI, Unify. Unify serves various grocery chains via the managing this what's known as a food wholesale supply chain networks. So our biggest customer is Whole Foods. Of course, there's Kroger's, the Safeway, Arbor's, and so forth. So if you think of your grocery store, who provides and distributes all of those fresh vegetables and bananas or, the can of soups and so forth, Unified Truck is behind that.
Nice, nice. So tell us a little bit about, your journey, when you started, how your education, what brought you here, um, just a bit to
Sure.
start with.
Yeah, let's just start with that. So, as I was telling you, I came to US. My first place landed in US is Lincoln, Nebraska.
That would have been a challenge, I'm sure.
Yeah. So it was a little bit of journey, but let me give you a quick pictorial view of the history. So I came to Nebraska, finished
Mhm.
out my computer science. I studied computer science when I was in undergrad. And then I finished my MIS, the Management Information Systems, and the
Mhm.
MBA as my master program. And then I got my first job in Denver, Colorado. So if you imagine what you can do in Nebraska, Nebraska, nothing but a cornfield. So I did the two things in Nebraska. One is enjoying the football games. The other is enjoying studying because there's not much you can do other than enjoying the scenery of cornfield.
You're, well, if I can go by what my parents were when I came here to study, your parents were probably really happy that Jason is out there and she can't do anything else but study, right?
But Colorado was a different story. So my first job was in Colorado, and Colorado with the Rocky Mountains and everything. There's ton of outdoor activities you can do. So my first thing I expressed for the experience of Colorado is I cannot imagine any student can do their study here because there's so much fun thing they can do. So I
Yes.
cannot imagine they are studying. while enjoying all that outdoor fascinating activities, right? There's summer camping and the winter skiing. So
Skiing,
that was
yes.
my first job in Colorado, and I stayed in Colorado about 14 years. And then I
Mhm.
had the three kids in Colorado, two boys and one girl. And I moved to California around 2013 with my another job in pharma life sciences side. So I stayed in California about 10 years. And where am I now? I'm in Boston, Massachusetts.
You have been zigzagging across the country. How has that been, considering you are coming from South Korea first right into Nebraska, and English is not necessarily like the first language in South Korea, whereas, at
Yeah.
least when I came, my entire schooling was done in English. That probably was a challenge for you as well, right?
Yeah, so South Korea, the way we learn English is by the book. Not these days, but when I was growing up, we were learning it through the books. And what we have like two, three English classes per week. That's the maximum English education you get out of school, right? So when I came to the US, am I well spoken in English? No. And what do we do when we are not confident? I was looking at the ground, and some people said, "Is there something on the ground? What are you looking for on the ground?" Right?
Wow.
Yeah, so that was my first experience when I was joining school in Nebraska. There's lots of people, saying hi, how are you? Even you do not know each other, right? A lot of students saying exchange hi and the greetings. And what
Right.
do? I'm looking at the ground, avoiding all the eye contacts possible. And then I got first job in Colorado, Denver, Colorado.
Hmm.
So as you can tell, I'm struggling big time with the English. So one of the meetings I go to, I sit there trying to listen, trying to understand. I cannot understand a lot of times. So one of episode I shared with Sangeeta and Christine earlier is my experience. So my first job in out of college was doing a DBA, database administrator. So at the time of that 1997, 1998, that time, DBA was a big thing. And my organization, I joined the IT data warehouse organization. So this telecommunication company, data warehouse and the database management, all those are big things. And everyone loved be proud to be a DBA. DBA and data architect, those are the good jobs. How many women? Guess how many women in that organization? That organization is around 150 people for you to know. So guess how many women would be there?
In technology, I would say, I don't know, like 15.
In our organization, if I count women, I think about five of us.
That's it.
That's it.
Wow.
Out of 150, about five of us as a DBA or data architect. And how
Wow.
many Asian women?
I'm gonna say you were just the one.
Yeah, I was the only one hired
That
out of my master program, but out of college, they call it. I'm the only 20s joined that group as Asian woman. It's something. So
is.
they were saying like, oh my gosh, I don't know how long you're gonna stay on this job. I stayed on that job for 14 years.
Wow. I'm sure you taught them a few things.
Yeah, so one of the things quickly lessons became a lessons learned is I couldn't understand a lot of these meetings. And in the meeting was huge. So some of the meetings we spent 2 hours and about 100 people joined that meeting. And
Hmm.
a lot of us are quiet, right? Listening and quiet.
Hmm.
So how did I went through my education when I was in college? I recorded a lot of sessions, right? I have
Right.
the tape recorder and I recorded the session. So I went to one of the meetings. I couldn't understand the thing for 2 hours. I felt really bad. So I told my manager, are you okay recording the session? Because one of the session I record is I picked up all the bad language, 4-letter bad language there. So I told my manager, like, I actually picked up some of the good 4-letter language, swearing language. I couldn't understand anything. So can I record the session so I can do some meeting notes and key takeaways and learn something out of that 2 hours? So my manager said, let's see what others say. Bring your tape recorder. Let's see whether everyone can agree on to that.
Mhm.
So I brought my tape recorder, sat in the middle of the meeting room, and my manager said, are you all okay recording the session today? So I said that they were like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Why not? Go ahead to record the session. And for 20 minutes, no one will speak of anything going on because a lot of times the way they open up the conversation is opening up with this swearing language, right? They're frustrated. There's lots of challenges. For them cannot just speak of the good status, what's going on side without
Right.
speaking of, what the heck is this or that, 4-letter things you can imagine, right? So, um, the manager could not stand that quietness, right? There's many things they need to go through and have some dynamic conversation.
Yes.
So the manager concluded, I guess what? This recording session is not working out, isn't it?
They did not know how to talk without swearing. So,
Exactly, exactly. So that was how I started learning. So a lot of those people in the meeting start coming up with the lunch sessions with me, or start coming up with some of the one-on-one chit chat sessions, so I can get used to how they speak or how they work and so forth. So it became a good social event for me. I do not have to sit quietly in the corner and then studying what DBA is supposed to do and all that stuff into like a good breakfast session, good lunch session. We did not talk
yeah,
about anything about the work, where we talk about like this, how's your life? How's your
right,
kids? Right.
right,
So I start picking up how they speak, their accent and so forth with that more of social things. Of
right.
course, still, took several months in that, the learning curves, but much better, knowing people actually help you to understand them better, right? Regardless of the accent, regardless of my lack of skill set in the understanding the language, was very helpful. So the first session of recording was not that great, but follow up with the social chats and the lunch sessions and so forth was a great event. I get to know them better, understand them better, and then a lot of them becoming my mentor, like a work mentor, unofficial mentor to guiding me around because it's a huge company. There's a lot of work going on. And of course, there aren't many of documentation, right? So
Of course.
great to learn. Yeah.
Of course. That's great. That's great. So that was a communications company, you said, right? Like
Telecommunication company. Yeah. So
telecommunication.
this is what's known as a mountain bear, serving a lot
Okay.
of like I would say spin-off from AT&T, right? They do not
I
call
see.
it as AT&T, but it's a US West is known as a mountain bear company.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
So I am just wondering, I'm looking at the different companies you've been at, right? So you were in telecommunications, you were in pharma, you are a
For say
multiple
food
different,
distribution.
there you go.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
just going through all these different states that you lived in, from Nebraska to Denver to California to Boston and the different companies you have worked with. Each state, like for example, I used to work on the East Coast, now I'm working on the West Coast. I definitely see a difference in the way people work and the way people communicate. Um, So for you, with all of these changes, how did you manage to, keep up with the different industries and the different states that you worked in?
Yeah, so let me start with the different state side, right? So why
Okay.
did I choose to move around? One
Right.
of
Yeah.
my motive is really understanding and experiencing the culture, right? So how do you learn different culture or experience different culture? Of course, you can do the trips, right? Trips, you can get exposed to lots of different culture, tourist, scenic views and so forth. But truly experiencing culture requires living there for a while.
Agreed. Yes.
Yeah. So that was my motivation of moving from Colorado into California and moving on to the Boston side. Culture is
Yes.
different. So South Korea culture is different from, of course, US culture, right? Very different. And then Nebraska and Colorado, I would say more of a West Central kind of culture. So I don't think it's that different from California. California was
Okay.
very different from Colorado.
Yeah.
So
I can imagine.
think here's my honest, transparent story for you. So
Yeah.
when I was in Colorado, a lot of these people, a lot of white people are there, right? So they're very nice. Nebraska people are very kind and very nice and then accommodating as
Right.
a foreigner.
Yes.
As a foreigner, we are the foreigner, and
Right.
they're very courteous as foreigner, right? Came to California, people are very direct, no longer nice and courteous and everything. But I'm not a foreigner anymore.
Right.
I'm one of them. Of course, there's a lot of Asians, a lot of whites, and lots of other, very diverse
Very
people there,
diverse. Yeah.
right? But I'm not foreigner anymore. There was a wake-up moment for me. When I was in Colorado, I did not thought I was a foreigner. I was treated like a foreigner, but I didn't know. I didn't know. But when I came to California, I realized I was a foreigner for them. I was not one of them.
That's
I
right.
was always a guest.
That
I
is
was
that is a
always a
very good
guest.
observation, Jessa. That's an
Yeah.
excellent observation. And I kind of agree with you. Of course, I lived in New York, so which is kind of like California, or I should just say that, everybody's treated equally or not treated well equally, whichever way you want to say. So for me, the change was more just in the way business is done, right? It was
Yeah.
when I was in New York, it was a lot more financial based, not so any longer because a lot of technology companies are out there too, but there it was
Mhm.
a lot more business based. You had to be in skirt suits, whereas you come to California and you walk into your technology company in a suit and they're like, what, are you interviewing somewhere? So there was definitely, those kind of differences, but this is very interesting to know, but and I can understand, how that could be. But when you were changing these states, now you said also, your family, you have 3 kids, you are balancing your career moves with your family. How did
Yeah.
that work out?
So moving the family to me is like moving the tree, right? So you as a family, you are rooted into the community itself.
Right.
So literally, you as a family, as a tree, you are like taking the whole root out of it and then moving into the new location. So it's a very painful journey there.
Right.
Um, but the way I was explaining to my kids is, hopefully this is a good journey for you, and you develop some skill sets of how to manage the change and adapt into a different culture and then develop a different levels of skill sets because the culture or the future we are to face here. So lots of dynamic changes. South Korea to me back in 1980s and 90s versus now is very different. Like I think, I don't know, you said to this team now or not, you mentioned about like K-pop cultures, right?
Yes,
K-pop culture is, I would say, 2020s, kind of
yes.
becoming very popular in 2018, right before pandemic or during the pandemic side, right?
All right.
Um, I don't, when I came to the US, there aren't many people asking me whether I'm Korean. They were asking me whether I'm Japanese or Chinese.
True, true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but even right now, these days, some people ask, "Are you Korean?" And some of them can speak Korean even, right? So we're living in a
Ah,
very different world.
we are. We are.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's really cool. So you have had, you have navigated all these different multiple layers of identity. So how do you think your cultural background influence your leadership style?
So the thing, I think most important thing is knowing my weakness and then how to accommodate my weakness. Because I was not planning to go back to South Korea and then picking up another career there. When I graduated and when I got a job here, I have made the decision to get a career in the US and then survive in the US and grow into my careers. That was my decision, right? So a lot of times I have to sit back. When I was in the junior side or when I become a senior manager or going into directors or current VP position, always thinking, what's my weakness? And what does that mean for others, right? So for instance, in the meetings, I was telling you, how can I contribute to the meeting? It's not speaking well, not knowing the job. How can I contribute to the meeting? So some of the things I picked up in my early career is taking meeting notes. So before go to the meeting, I have to know what the meeting is about. So I can hear better, I can understand better. But
Mhm.
if you hear a lot of management, you know, I would say a lot of times, what do you hear from your managers or PMs or other social meetings and so forth? Set the agenda. Make sure you have a meeting agenda and the goals and outcomes clear for the meetings. Make sure there's meeting notes. Right before I learned those things, that was in my backbone already because I was doing it to overcome my language side of barrier, to understand the meeting better. And I want to always contribute, even if a minor things, I want to contribute to the meeting, right? There's no other ways to speak properly into the meeting for others to understand me. So that taking the meeting notes, these days, of course, you can use Gen AI to take meeting notes instead of you doing it yourself. But meeting notes, I would say, is a very powerful thing, right? As you start taking those notes and they summarize them, a lot of unknown skill sets you can develop yourself. Of course, there is some appreciation or sometimes zero appreciation you will get from others, but do it for yourself is my
Right.
advice for you. But it was a great skill set. I actually appreciate myself for doing so because that is one of the most important communication skills you need it for your entire career.
I cannot agree with you more. I don't know whether this is a factor of being a woman of color. This is but this is something that for me is very important. Every meeting that I am in, I really like to take notes, and I will literally take them the old-fashioned way. in a notebook, because it's like I need to just quickly look at it and see what I want to think about later. And that notebook is like my Bible. I'm always worried I'm going to forget my notebook somewhere. I can
Yeah.
afford to lose my phone, but not my notebooks. I can completely understand where you're coming from. And for me, it absolutely resonates. But in the same vein, so I know when we spoke about earlier, you said knowledge is power. I can see where you are. You are prepping before the meeting. You're making sure you have the notes for the meeting. You are probably going back and looking at the meeting notes later to see if you missed something, if and understand and learn from there. Any other things that you have to talk about, as far as uh, other efforts that you made in order to come up to speed with everything that was going on?
So other thing is your voice to be heard, right? So
Yes.
I want to talk about that a little bit because culturally, how we grown up. So the culture I grown up as an Asian woman. South
Mm-hmm.
Korea culture, I don't know you are familiar with. Um, a woman not to speak out in the big meetings or big gatherings and so forth, right? And a lot of times it's more of we are lectured, right? There's someone else is speaking to us, and
Right.
we supposed to listen and just appreciate what's being lectured about or what's being talked about and so forth. So my, one of the question I was thinking is, I want to make sure my presence as the person in the meeting or in the team or in the company to be recognized. And how can you do that? How can you do that is the
Mm-hmm.
question, right? Whether I'm playing an analyst role or whether I'm the DBA or I'm the manager, from the lens of the C-suite, probably we are not that important or we are pretty important, depending on how I position myself into the company. So the putting your voice out to the public requires a lot of practice, a lot of practice. So it cannot happen overnight. Therefore, I would recommend you to start practicing in a small meetings, in a bigger meetings. So think of your all team meetings in your department, right? There's a lot of opportunities. You can bring good questions, or you can volunteer to have some, small contribution, like a 5-minute ice-breaking sessions. So a lot of those things, surprisingly, is a very welcoming contribution. So that's how I did with this meeting notes, as I was telling you.
Uh-huh.
If some of the managers or team members, Jisun, you take a good meeting notes, didn't you? Yeah, I have the meeting notes. Do you want me to share with you? No, no, no. Do not share that with me. However, out of the meeting notes, what is the good question do you have? Okay, I do not know yet, but what do you mean what question I have out of the meeting notes? No, I will not give you any specific guidance, but I just want you to know what question you may have out of that meeting. So what I used to do with a lot of these meetings or all hands meetings and so forth, I would start thinking of what's going to be my question. How do I phrase myself in front of the public to put the right question? So that great, of course, that gives lots of visibility, and visibility comes with the risk itself, right? But if you're thinking of you want your presence to be known, yourself is known to the team or your coworkers or your company, start practicing those, right? It's a even small contribution. I would say there's some people appreciates it.
That is, uh, this is one of the most important things I've heard in all the conversations that I've had. And I'll tell you why, because it's both ways. One is from what you're saying, it's helpful to those who feel like they're not being heard. The other is for people on the other side of the table. Your manager, I applaud your manager to have been so inclusive, to have come to you and say, Jisun, do you have a question? Right? And I think it's something for all of us to learn. So, on the one hand, if I feel like my voice is not being heard, hey, there are these little steps that I can follow. And on the other hand, I have to make sure that if I see someone in the room who has not had a question or who has not been able to communicate during the meeting, that you reach out to that person afterwards and say, hey, maybe you have some questions, maybe we can talk to, one-on-one, and maybe at the next meeting you can talk about this. And that I feel is so important because at the end of the day, we tend to look at DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and we're really focusing on the diversity part, not realizing that, yes, we may have diverse people, but are they really feeling included? And this, what you just said, was so, so important. So thank you for that. Um, on on the same note, though, being, from the background that you were, I'm sure you had your fair share of like setbacks and, discrimination that you probably went through in your professional life as well. How were you able to like maintain resilience and, continue to pursue what it is that you wanted to do?
Yeah. So, I was thinking like, what would be the key takeaway you can have out of today's session, right? So one is I was telling you, do your due diligence and then make sure your voice to be heard, one way or the other. But the last thing I would say is self-determination.
Uh-huh.
So I want to talk about self-determination side. So I don't know whether it's a culturally or not, but South Korea side, let me go back to my origin, right?
Roots, of
South
course.
Korea, when I was graduating from the college, a lot of debates we went through. Now you are out, if you are graduate out of college, we as a woman has two choices: getting married and take care of the kids and become the good housewife.
Uh-huh.
80% of time. That's the choice for women.
Uh-huh.
Alternative is, yes, you can have a job up until you have your first kid. That's when I determined I'm gonna go to US and develop my career, not as mom or not as a housewife, but both. I'll become the housewife, I'll become the mom, but I'll become a career woman as well. So with that determination, do you think everyone supports you and help you to become a good career woman and good mom and everything? No, no, absolutely not. Actually, sport is 10%, 90% is the opposite side, right? 90%
Yes,
is.
absolutely. Yeah.
So many times you need to think, oh, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? You know, um, what good is this for whom? If the answer is, oh, I'm doing this to contribute for my family, contribute for my kids. No. Why am I doing this? Needs to come back to you. It's for me. It's for me, right? So for instance, when I had the three kids, they, some are in college now and some are the youngest one in high school. So what do you think raising three kids as a career woman here in US without my mom and daddy supporting me or my parents-in-law helping me out? A lot of things I'm hearing is the job is not that important. Taking care of your kids is most important. You can go back to your job anytime you want. No. The answer is absolutely no. going back to your job after 10 years later is different from continuing job throughout that 10 years. So you need to think of that question of why am I doing this? For whom am I doing this? Yeah. So it cannot be it cannot be some money, or it cannot be for my family. It's not something like for me, it was my determination. Why did I come to US? Away from my family. Why did I want to study here in the US? Right. And then what do I want to achieve in my life when I die? When I go to my bed, and then or go to sleep, or when I get old, I will die, right? So what am I gonna think when I become 70s and 80s, and what I'm going to smile at? Of
Right.
course, we will smile at our kids, and a lot of things we have as the tangible things. But think of those things. What am I going to smile at? One of the things I'm smiling at is it's a good decision, and I stick with my decision. Right? I stick with my decision. There's many, many challenges, and all the challenges actually help me grow because I have my self-determination.
That's good. I mean, we need to own our ambitions. There is absolutely no shame in saying, I want to make sure that I have a good career, because in general, when women have children, they have this dilemma of, oh, what will I? And I have almost never seen that question even come across the father's brain, right? It's like, oh, I have a kid now. Should I take time off and look after my kids? How many times does that happen? Right? So I I and I completely agree with you, because I actually took time off to look after my kids. And would my career path have been different? Would my career trajectory have been different if I was working throughout? Absolutely. Absolutely, it would have been different. I think that we are now we are situated better because especially after the pandemic, people have realized that, women and men and whoever can be at home and still contribute, professionally. So that makes it a little bit easier, because then in many cases, both the parents can be home and there is support for the children at home, especially when, like you said, when you don't have the support of your parents or your in-laws helping out with the kids. So that's definitely, I think, improving. And if I were to do it all over again, I would probably do things differently. And I would definitely, if I were to talk to other women who are in the same boat, I would say, don't just give up your career without thinking really hard about it, right? So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is that is, I think, something that I have learned myself over the years. Um, but yeah, I mean, very important what you just said. There are so many things that you said that were so important. And I'm just so glad. So I have to share one thing, and I think I shared with you before too. This month is supposed to be AANHPI, Asian American, Native Highlander, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander month. And one of the things that I read earlier this month, which just kind of blew my mind, was there was a survey done across America. I think there were about over 5,000, 6,200 people or something that they surveyed over the age of 18. And they asked the people to name, you know, uh, a famous Asian American. And 42% of the people could not name anybody. Most people who name someone named Jackie Chan, who's not even American, you know.
Yeah.
And forget about talking about Asian American women. You know, people were just completely unaware. And I feel that sometimes it is up to us to actually increase our presence amongst people and help. I don't want to say educate, but just familiarize people with,
Yeah.
the contributions that Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders have made. And I'm sure, like, if we say a name to people, they will be like, oh yeah, it's just the fact that people don't necessarily think of it that way. So I
Yeah.
am really, really happy that we had a chance to speak with you, who is a representative of this community, on our conversation today. And I know we just went probably well over our time limit, but if we can take the next 5 minutes or so to just, if there are any questions that anyone else has that you can probably answer, then
Yes, Sangeeta, there is a question. I'll just read it out. Rajesh asked this question. Um, he says, how do you balance work challenges, deadlines, family, social, and keep yourself updated with dynamic technology and management trends? Please share your advice and best practices, especially for today's tech worker community.
There's no magical way of doing it. Let me tell you that as the first thing. But always when you start the day, right? So we have this morning and the afternoon. And the morning is a good time for you to do a creative work. Afternoon is a good time to do a busy work, right? So what am I saying? Prioritize your work. Not everything has the same priority. Of course, a lot of things are important and urgent and so forth. But when I wake up in the morning, I was thinking, what's the most important one I need to achieve today? Out of those, which one requires my most creativity, my bright mind as I wake up in the morning? Of course, my breakfast is. Breakfast is the most important one. And sending my kids to school is the most important one. But that's something I want you to think about. Like, what's the most important? And out of those, which one is busy work? I can put into the afternoon side. And then which one is important and the creative ones, requiring my bright mind. So I can put a good chunk of time in the morning, and then the rest I take easy. So think of the priority setting as the important way of juggling the balances between your life and the work. And of course, you need to make sure you put some time for yourself every day, right? Throughout the day, you'll be busy with the work and everything. And especially, if you are the mom with the growing kids and so forth, you are entitled to take at least 1 hour for yourself. At least 1 hour. So let me share my secret. I go to grocery shopping all by myself. I don't need to do a single shopping. Why do I go to grocery store? I can take a break from everything. I don't need to buy. So I just walk around with the cards. And then I just look at some, like checking the eggs. And I'm counting the eggs, right? Is any of this is broken? But what do I do? I take a break from everything else going in the world.
It's true.
So yes, balance yourself, but two things to keep in mind. What's the priority today? But also have at least 1 hour for yourself. So that's my secret.
Okay. So there are a couple more questions. There's some questions coming in on Teams also. I know that there was a question about mentoring. what kind of qualities would you look for in a mentor, especially if you're an Asian American or an Asian American woman?
So, looking for the right mentor will take time. There's lots of different mentors. I would say seek for your mentor first. So for instance, in the company programs, there is a mentor program where you'll be educated to become a mentee or a mentor, right? But that's more assignment based. But in the company, you can look for your own mentor also. And some mentor will give, let's say, teach you how to do things. Some mentor become your inspiration. So one of the mentor I still keep in touch is more on the inspiration side. He's not gonna do anything for me. He's not gonna make me connection with another things. But he always give you an idea that what's your next step as a career or the life. What's your next step?
Right.
Why do you want to do it? And make you think again where you want to go next, right? So mentor is very important. Make sure you do have a few mentors, not just the one, few mentors, and keep in touch with them. That's another thing, right? A lot of times we are busy, we lose track of building the relationships or, losing track of the context. But this is another thing my mentor told me. Don't seek for your mentor or your peer when you are in need, right? It takes only 5 minutes. So keep in touch and make sure you still make that connection to be live. Do not make it inactive for a while and trying to activate again. But mentor can help you that kind of small tips here and there, especially where you may not be able to think about. So start building your mentors and keep the relationship to be live every day.
Great. There's quite a few questions, so let me go through a couple more of these, and maybe there are these two questions which maybe you can combine. Susie asks, when a woman does plan to have children at a point in her life when she's highly busy with work and wants to be 100% at both being a businesswoman and a mom, what is your biggest advice on balancing these two and being successful at both?
Okay. So let's talk about money a little bit. Where you're gonna spend the money. So of course we have the career, we earn the money, right? So when I was raising my kids, there was the first question. The money I make was exactly the same money I spend on daycare.
I can relate to that. Yes.
So hopefully this resonates with you a little bit. There's a decision you need to make now. My kids may have better quality life as babies and very young kids for mom taking care of them versus let them grow in the daycare. Lots of bad things can happen in the daycare. And a lot of times you feel like you're wasting your money because they cannot go to daycare even, right?
Right.
But when you start the investment for you to balance out between your life, I say family life, versus your career life, when you try to balance those two out, don't worry about the investment you need to make there. It will work out in a certain way. Your investment, as you go into the career, you go to work, you may think of yourself, not only I'm making the money to send my kids to the daycare, I'm investing my time and the effort to become to develop my career and to support my family. And when I go back home, I regain my energy to give back to my kids, to raise my kids. And I have a story to tell them. So balancing is not easy. Balancing these two out is not easy. And make sure there's abundant community support you can line up, but it's not easy. There's times you may cry many times. If your mom and daddy is around, ask for help. Asking for help is sometimes not easy, lots of no's comes your way. But
Right.
ask for help. But sometimes you need to leverage for this money to work for you.
Yeah, very true. I mean, and you can always, it's not just daycare, right? I remember where when I first started and when my first child was born and I was working, I felt guilty having someone come in to clean my house because I felt like I was not doing my job.
Mhm.
And then I realized, why am I feeling guilty? Because no one else is thinking about this. I'm making my life easier, giving that much time back for me to either, work at my professional job or spend more time with my kids instead of cleaning my house. So I think as moms, we kind of need to get over that guilt. But having said that, as a mom, as a person, and this is another question, right, is how do you draw the line between office and personal life? Because I know you work really hard, Jason, so how do you actually balance this, or how do you draw the line? Where do you draw the boundaries?
It's hard to draw the lines, very hard to draw the lines. But a lot of us say we do not like micromanagement, right? So micromanagement means, oh yeah, manager may say you come to 8 a.m. and they leave at 5 p.m. And does my work finish at 5 p.m.? Sometimes not. So earlier in my career, I asked my manager two things. I need the flexibility, especially this is when I was growing the kids. I need the flexibility. I'll make sure the work gets done, whether it's 9 p.m. in the evening or 6 a.m. in the morning. I will get the work done. So you build up a little bit of flexibility instead of creating a strict line and the boundary between those two. That flexibility, of course, some work for the company's benefits, but some work for yourself also. So you build up the relationship, you create that flexibility and make your brand becoming you deliver always. You commit and you deliver based on that brand, based on the trust you build, you gain some of the flexibility for yourself also. But what I can tell you is that line is very, very blurry. It doesn't work always with the clear distinction between those two words. So sometimes invite friends, the work friends to your family parties or something. So, but it's a relationship. I think it's not about drawing the lines. It's more of building the relationships.
That's true. So I have a question from Suraj here. So, Jisun, we have on this Fireside Chat, we have audiences from who are actually global. They're not just in the US, they're outside the US as well, but they're working closely with the US clients and US teams. So, based on your experience, what advice would you have for them to accelerate their careers and make an even more visible impact as women leaders?
So I worked a lot of people in India. This is from like way back when I was in telecommunication company. So I worked a lot of people from India. What I'm observing is a lot of times the men speak up and sometimes they speak a little bit too fast. But what I'm trying to tell you is what does US people does differently from people in the India? People in the US, they have a more discussion time with the leaders, right?
Mhm.
People in offshore, they have less conversation time. That means you need to build up. If you want to grow up in your career, you want to make sure your presence is known, set up a one-on-ones, set up a team meetings, right?
Yes.
So make yourself known. Only then, actually, you can start making progress in your career. When you keep hiding yourself behind the scenes, even though you do a lot of work, actually, it's very hard for some of the managers to know. Maybe, if the good manager should know what good people does, right? But, explaining what you've been accomplishing or having this kind of short conversation session, it's not actually hard. Doing it first time is hard, but make sure you try to make yourself known and your contribution is known. But most importantly, have the communication line developed. So you can easily go to so-and-so to talk about what you've been doing, or even the especially challenges, right? There's lots of challenges you face during your career and work and so forth. So for you to, face that challenge, to me, challenge is not something you overcome. You face challenge and you achieve the challenge. So think about that. For you to achieve the challenge, you need someone else helping you right there. And that helping hands is everywhere. So make sure you build that relationship. Your communication and the conversation line is there. When you fall, you expect someone else to reach out to you to help you to stand up again.
Agreed. Because no one's going to advocate for you but yourself. And you have to be really proactive. So that's a good takeaway, that don't be afraid of being proactive. Reach out to your manager, reach out to maybe your peers, whatever it is, set up the one-on-one, set up the team meetings, and talk about what you have achieved.
Yeah.
And I
or
think
what
even
you want to achieve too.
Yeah, and what you want to achieve. That's, yes, a very, very good point. So there is another question over here, and I don't know who it is from because it says anonymous. It says, will Jisun be an entrepreneur in the near future?
I'm always an entrepreneur. Whether I have my own business or not, I do not have one. I want to have my own business in someday. I don't know whether there'll be my own IT side of company and so forth. But in my mind, I'm already entrepreneur. Why? Within my own career, I work for big companies like telecom or biotech or food distribution and so forth. But in my career, what I do is I'm always doing something new that requires a different way of doing it, involving the different people, thinking of financial success or the financial risk and so forth. So in my mind, I'm already entrepreneur. Do I want to go outside and build my own company? I want to do that at some time, but I'm not quite there yet, but I will be.
That's great. You know what? You have inspired a lot of questions. I know we are well over the time limit, so I'm going to go to one more, and then there's one comment that I want to read out to you. So Vinaya asks, can you share a time when you faced a significant career challenge and how you overcame it?
Oh, significant challenge. So let me tell you, layoff. I went through some of the layoffs, and I don't know whether you went through that. It's not an easy thing to overcome, but after I go through. So let me tell you two things. One is the layoff. The other is getting this green card stuff. A lot of us go through that, right? Immigration challenge. Those two, after you're achieving it, it's nothing. Going through it is very painful, right? All of you went through one way or another, immigration challenges or the career change challenges or layoffs and so forth. When you're in it, it's a very challenging. When there's a challenges, it's very hard to think of that as opportunity, but it is opportunity. So it's a really good opportunity, and the way to build up the challenge into an opportunity is preparing yourself and talk with lots of friends. And block your ears of no's. Block your ears from your no's. And then open your mind to the yes side. because
Yes.
this is the time you want to hear all of the positive influence, positive talk. So you already hard in that situation. It's okay to plug your ears to the no side and then open up your heart to the yes side, and then thinking of what can I do next? Every day is something you can achieve, whether you're on the job or onto a new opportunity or onto this challenge. What's my next? So one thing I can tell you about my immigration challenge, when I was about to get my green card, there was a 9/11. And all my stuff went to the immigration backlog office, sitting there. So I waited about 4 years, and someone told me, did you make a phone call to immigration office? No, I'm waiting, my turn. So Jisun, you can sit there, wait for another 10 years. The alternative is you make a phone call to them. Yeah, I can make a phone call to them, but what they're gonna say, they'll say no, I know. But what happens by you making the phone call? What happens is for you making the phone calls, your file comes out of backlog office, go to the front office, and your application is known to those people who need to process them. Same thing, when you get laid off, now you are new candidate for a lot of the new companies, right? So make yourself known. That's how I overcome my biggest challenges.
True. I have one more question from Gopi, but I'll send that to you separately because we have gone well
Okay.
over time. There's one comment I wanted to read out to you. It says, not a question, but a comment here. It's inspiring to hear about your journey being an immigrant and on top of it, an Asian woman in technology. You are a pioneer and inspiration for many listening to you. Thanks for sharing your experiences, Jisun. And I'm reading this out to you because I couldn't have said it better. So thank you so much, Jisun. I really appreciate you being here. You brought so much of so many observations that I know we can all use. So I really appreciate you spending the time here, and I'm hoping that we can meet up in person in the near future. And I will send you the rest of the questions if you don't mind.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone for listening, and good discussion together.